You now tuned in to the Gumptown Podcast. I'm your boy Doug B. We ain't got nothing to talk about, but we got something to talk about. Let's go. Good people, good people, good people. Welcome back to the Gumptown Podcast, episode 120. I'm your boy Doug B. If you tuned in to this podcast, thank you for your time and your attention. I really appreciate you giving this podcast a shot. Today's guest is the founder and owner of Collective Psychotherapy, PLLC. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm sure we'll all be inspired by her story. Let's chop it up with Dr. Shundrika Jones. Dr. Jones, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad to hear that, and thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time to chop it up.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, we're here to talk about all the great things you have going on with Collective Psychotherapy. But before we talk about the business, let's get to know the woman behind the brand. So you were born and raised in Prattville, Alabama, right outside of the Gump. What was your upbringing like?
Yes, I was. Prattville, Alabama. My upbringing was pretty good. It was amazing. Honestly, I think looking back, right, I didn't realize how fortunate I was coming from, Alabama. And then more specifically, I was raised in a town called Prattville, like Spring Hill in Prattville. And so, a lot of kids from that area don't always make it out of the area. And so my parents were fortunate to show me something different. And seeing those things was amazing. And then when I went to college, I had an opportunity, and I went to college in Mobile, Alabama. So I didn't go out of Alabama, but I did go away from Montgomery and Prattville area. But just meeting different people and hearing their story, it really gave me a insight into what my childhood was and growing up and being appreciative of those things. I think that was very eye-opening for me, because I think I took a lot of things and thought that everybody had those same opportunities. I'm like, oh man, everybody went on family vacations. Everybody parents, co-parented, this way or that way. My parents separated, but they did a great job with co-parenting me from two different households. They stayed consistent with that across households, so that wasn't an issue. But I think overall my upbringing was amazing. I got diversity because I spent my childhood in Prattville, and then 3 years of high school I actually spent in Montgomery. So that was a big change when, going from Prattville High School, very diverse population there. And then when I went to Montgomery, more of our culture there, the Black African-American culture. So that was different. But I think it helped shape who I am today, being able to coexist wherever I go. So I really appreciate my upbringing in Alabama.
Yes, ma'am. Powerful stuff. Sounds like you had a great village around you when you were coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Aunts, uncles. And I think now today I look back and I'm like, everybody had a role to play. My village, every single person played a role. No matter how small it was or how large it was, it played into who I became today. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it definitely takes a village. I know it's one of those cliches we hear thrown around all the time, but as we grow up and we become adults, we get a chance to look back, like you've already spoken on. You get a chance to see how everyone played their different roles in your life. That's amazing. Had a great village, parents, uncles, aunties. Grew up in Prattville, moved to Montgomery, then you went on to Mobile, to Spring Hill College. What was that experience like?
Spring Hill College was different, man. It's different. It's a primarily white institution. It wasn't a lot of African American Black people there. But I can tell you this: the ones that were there, we knew and we stood proud, and I think we all represented the culture great there. But like I said, like for me, it still gave me an opportunity to learn how to work in a space and occupy a space with people of a different color, right? A different race. And that's something that I honestly feel is really important today. I have found myself, even as a doctor, I found myself at times questioning, do I deserve to be in a room with, you know, with my Caucasian counterparts? Especially oftentimes I find myself that I'm the only Black person in a room. And I've questioned that, but then I have to reflect back on the times where I was the only Black person in the classroom and I still excelled. I still, was able to compete on the same level as them. I had the same opportunities educationally. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity because it just helped me build that confidence that I didn't know I would need today. And it's really crazy because I have to tell people this. I even tell my clients this because I have clients that struggle with that. I'm like, look, like I'm a doctor and I understand what you're saying. I found myself in some of those same positions, but I have to reflect back on the moments when it was like, I've been in this position. What did I do to overcome that fear? And is that an internal fear? Is this something that I'm projecting on myself? And a lot of times it is. So I am very fortunate to have gone to Spring Hill. If I had to do it again, I would choose Spring Hill again. It's an amazing institution. I met some amazing people. Matter of fact, two of my best friends, that's where I met them at college. So Spring Hill College. So yeah.
Wow. So that's great. You got a chance to get exposed to working with, like you said, Caucasian, white people, and just being the only one in the room. I I think it's called imposter syndrome, where you question whether you're good enough or not. I've been there myself, and it comes a point in your life where you have to realize I'm in this room for a reason. I'm pretty sure you got to that point at some point in your journey. Clearly, you've gotten there because what you've accomplished since attending Spring Hill College. So yeah, that's one thing in our community. I think we all suffer with a little imposter syndrome, especially on the road to success. We often question whether we are worthy. And the short answer to it, absolutely we're worthy. We are what we are for a reason. So that's great that you were able to go there, get exposed to working with different races of people, just gain that confidence that's been able to carry you throughout your career. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I love to, even when I have an opportunity to speak with adults, do some professional development, I love to kind of highlight that, right? Because I think a lot of times people can look at your life once you've made it to a certain position and they think that everything is kind of easy or that it's like, oh, well, she just wakes up and this becomes like something that she does every day and is natural. But I still work on some of those things because in every new environment that I step into, I constantly have to remind myself, like you were saying, like I deserve to be here. It's a reason why I'm in this room today, right? And so I just have to believe that and tap into that in those moments.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So let's talk about your time in the military. First things first, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So what was your time in the military? Well, are you still serving before I ask my next question?
Still currently reserved.
Okay, awesome. So what's been your experience in the military?
Say that again.
What has your experience like been in the military?
My experience has been up and down. Um, it has been some positive experiences where you get to meet some really good people, you get to travel. It gives you the opportunity to build resiliency. Those are things that I'm very grateful for, right? It honestly gave me my leadership experience. Being a young officer, having to step into that role once again, Black female officer, right? And a lot of people you're leading don't look like you, or a lot of the people that are your peers and you're competed against don't look like you. So it gives you opportunity to build some character that transitions well into civilian world. So those are the positive things that I appreciate. Definitely the people. I've met some amazing people along my journey in the military. Some of the not so positive things that I'm not afraid to talk about because once again, I think, with good comes bad, right? There is it is hard being a Black female in the army. Because you've I don't know if you've heard this, but people used to say it's a man's army. And so, being a female in general is hard, but then being a Black female makes it a little bit more challenging. because you are competing. And that is the kind of the way the military is. It's almost like it's a conflict because on one hand, they're like, hey, we're one team, one fight. And then the other hand, you have to compete to try to get this like evaluation to get promoted. So it can be stressful, but I think once again, if you learn and you take the positive from it, it helps you navigate the negative parts that you're going to experience in the military. Because I think no matter what job or career field you're in, you're going to have some type of negative experience at some point. But I think for me, what I did was gravitated towards the positive experiences to help me navigate any negative challenges that I did had. I did have in the military. I also did a lot of reaching out for mentorship. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. That also helped my career. So I've progressed pretty well. I actually enlisted originally as a private first class, and I'm one of those people. I joined because I needed school money. As we mentioned, I went to Spring Hill College, pretty expensive school. So I needed to help pay for school. So I joined the military, and then my drill sergeant, she actually encouraged me to become an officer. And I had no idea, like, honestly, anything about becoming an officer, had no aspirations about becoming an officer, any of that. And right before I graduated basic training, she called me to her office and she asked me, how come I didn't become an officer? And I told her, I have no idea. I don't even know what is that? How do I do that? And she's like, you're currently in college. Go back, do ROTC. Once you graduate, you commission and you become an officer. And she told me that it was something about me that she seen that she felt like I needed to go that route. And yeah, so I took her up on that, and here I am today, captain, in a year or so, getting ready to get my first look at major. So yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. In the military, kicking butt, climbing the ladder. That's amazing. Like I love to hear stuff like that. And yeah, it's a man's army. Yeah, that's some mumbo jumbo. You define the odds, and I love to hear it. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I read where you've had a chance to travel the world, being in the military. What's a memorable place you've been because of the military that you want to talk about?
Oh man. Um, I've been to Dubai on the military expense. So that was amazing. Just to be able to go to Dubai and literally, it was one of the cheapest trips I ever taken in my life. But I was able to fly during that time. I was able to get some of my friends to come along. So that trip ended up turning out to be amazing. So yeah, I really enjoyed that because I was already deployed at that time. So we get like you get to take leave, a pass or whatever, then a break. And I did that and planned that whole thing out and end up taking a trip to Dubai. It was only like an hour trip or so, like 45 minutes or something. It was a pretty and it was pretty cheap too, like $100 or something.
Hey,
So
it don't matter how you got there, you got there. I ain't mad at you. Let me find me a Dubai trip for $100. That's what it's about. Being in the military, getting a chance to serve the country, travel the world, and just gain that exposure. So, from in your own words, just how is Dubai? I haven't been there yet. So, what was your experience being there?
um it was amazing. I'll say that. It was fun. I don't know if I want to go back though. I'll be honest. I don't know if I would want to just that's not one of the places I would say that, oh my God, I have to go back. I enjoyed it. I experienced it. But I think there are other places I would choose to go. Even if somebody said, hey, what's a free trip I'm paying for, where you want to go? I don't think I would choose to buy.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I say, I haven't been there yet, but I could see why you would say that. Just looking at the pictures and hearing people talk about it, like it's luxurious, like it's laid out. Like Dubai is a beautiful place, but okay, you go and see all of that, and the Burj Khalifa, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, that and just all the camel rides and all that good stuff. So, did you get a chance to experience all of that while you were there as well?
I did the camel ride and I did the where you go and do the little bikes in the sand or
Okay.
the truck in the sand or something. But I did that. So I ate. I liked when I go places, like I like to try different foods. So I did that. and I walked the mall. So I think for what I like to do, I was able to get that experience in that one trip. And I think that's why I wouldn't go back. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a foodie myself. So did you try anything exotic, anything outside of chicken, fish, and beef?
I don't think I went that exotic. I think I pretty much stayed within some things that I was like, okay, I know what this is.
Hmm.
One of my friends, that they pretty wide open with some things that they're willing to try. I'm more conservative. I'll try some different, cultural food, but I have to. Is this chicken? Is this, I'm one of those people.
Hey, it's all good. You know your palate, and you're gonna stay in that lane, and nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. So let's talk about what you got going on as a businesswoman. You're the founder and owner of Collective Psychotherapy. What services do you all offer?
Yeah, so collective psychotherapy is here based in Texas. It is all telehealth. And we offer counseling services. So we do individual, family, and couples. I actually started out with just myself. And then I hired two other clinicians. So it is a total of three of us as of today. And in the future, I am looking to hire about one to two more, and just continue to build my brand. But yeah, so we focus on mental health services, from something where it's just stress related to more serious diagnosis with, bipolar disorder, things of that nature. We don't prescribe any medicine, but we do we do collaborate and have a good referral base for any of our clients that needs medication management. We do refer them out to psychiatrists or physician assistants to be able to give them a assessment and get them prescribed medication.
Good stuff. So mental health, therapy, those are all great things. And of course, in our community, Dr. Jones, those things are taboo. What inspires you to want to come into this space that you're in now? By the way, I think you're doing a great thing being in this space. I'm just curious, like what piqued your interest to want to come into this space?
That is a really great question. And I get asked that a lot. And I'll tell you, I think honestly, I don't know if I chose this. I think it was kind of like it's kind of, I think God kind of placed me in the right position, right? And a little backstory or knowledge, right? I like to tell people is that in order for things to happen, preparation and alignment has to meet. And what I mean by that is uh preparation for you're constantly preparing yourself. And I'm one of those people, I went to school and I just prepared. Like I was preparing myself. I didn't know necessarily what direction or what outcome I was going to get, but I constantly prepared myself. And then the perfect timing came where, people needed mental health services. And so with my degree, with all these internships, with the military, because I also was a sexual assault victim advocate in the Army. So with that experience, everything just aligned. And so when that happened, I realized exactly where I needed to be. And so when I actually joined the military, I was getting a degree in psychology, but I honestly never knew what I was going to do next. I just was like, okay, I'll figure that out when I get there. Because I had a lot of things I wanted to do. I was one of those kids that thought I wanted to be a dentist at one point, an accountant at one point. And then I went to school and took my first psychology class and fell in love with it. And so then I was like, okay, well, how can I mix something with science and psychology together? And I didn't have the best teachers, right? That goes back to having those. I didn't have teachers that looked like me. So a lot of the teachers didn't understand how to help me when I needed help versus, the one or two teachers I did have that looked like me. If I struggled, no matter how smart I was, they could also see that, hey, it's certain areas that you struggle in. They knew how to help me. And so that also shifted me away from the dentistry. It was like, okay, well, if it's like this, then I don't really want to be in that career field. I want to go somewhere else. And so I ended up joining the military, and people used to say I listen well. They're like, you listen, like you actually listen to us. And I'm like, okay, like to me, I thought that was normal. I'm like, that's what people do. You talk, I listen. Like that's me. I'm like, I'm just like, I didn't think I was doing anything special. I'm like, okay, I'm just listening. And as I reflected on it, I'm like, you know what? I now know, or at least I think I know what I want to do. I want to go and do something where I can help people and listen to people. And because this is what I was told I was good at. So I remember going back to school and I talked to one of my professors who I had a really good relationship with. And I was explaining to her, like, hey, this is what my experience was like. And I know it aligns with psychology, but what can I do with that outside of this? So she was giving me all my options. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, So then I'm also the kid where it's like, okay, can this make me money? Right. So then I'm Googling and I'm like, oh, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to, I don't know if this is right for me. So after that, I ended up going to my officer training school, like right after I graduated with my bachelor's, which was a blessing in disguise because that gave me 4 to 5 months to not have to worry about that, because like you're there full time, you're getting paid good money. You're talking about a 20-some-year-old kid, getting paid really good money. So it's like, okay, whatever, like, I don't have to think about that. So then I came back like right towards the end of me graduating. I remember being in my room and I'm like, I have to figure out what am I going to do, after this, because this money is temporary. I'm not going active duty. I'm going back and I'm going to be reserved. So I have to figure out my next move. I got to get a career going. I don't want to go back home with my parents. So that was my motivation. I'm like, I absolutely can't go home because I just don't want to. Not that they didn't want me there. I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to do that. So I started just applying for jobs. I knew I wanted to come to Texas for some reason. I had visited some battle buddies a while back when I was a PFC, and I'm like, oh man, I want to be in Texas. Didn't really know which part, or I wasn't set on one part, but I knew I wanted to come. I had never been to Houston, by the way, when I took this job offer. And so I'm just applying for jobs, and I finally get an interview. And it was actually in Dallas, and I end up applying for a parole officer job. I don't even know how that came about, but I applied for it, and I interviewed for the one in Dallas, and then I hadn't heard anything. So I graduate from my basic officer leadership course, which we call BOLIC. I make it back home to Prattville, and I'm at home. My mom had gone to work, and I think I had just woke up or something. I get a phone call, and it's from the Houston parole, and they're like, "Hey, we want to do an interview. Can you, interview today?" And I'm like, maybe, yeah, I guess. What time? And so we set up the time, and like literally a day or two, or maybe no more than like 3 or 4 days, I get a phone call saying, "Hey, we're offering you this job." So I take it. Like I didn't think twice about it. I'm like, yep, I'm gonna take it, because at this point I need a job. I want to be in Texas. It was Houston, so I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. And I remember telling my parents, I was like, oh yeah, I'm moving to Houston. Like just like that. It's like, yep, I'm moving to Houston. What? When? In about a month, I'll be gone. And so yeah, so that happened. So I get out here and I have that experience. And it was the worst job I ever had. Like, like I started out happy because in my mind, I'm like, man, this is my first adult job. Or I felt like a big girl. I'm like, oh man, like this is my first job. I got my own apartment by myself, away from my parents, my family. Like this is me. I'm an adult. And I absolutely hated it. Did not like it at all. So I knew I couldn't quit though, because I'm like, I can't quit because I have to pay my bills. I'm not going back home. So I stuck it out, and that resiliency that I talked about. And I started saying I need to get a master's degree. And what I was doing in parole was helping people. Although you supervise people who come out of prison, you're still helping them, right? And they literally utilize you. They will call you to tell you, some problems that they're having, and they expect you to be able to kind of help them solve that. So I still at that point didn't know like where my career is taking me, but I knew that, okay, it's something where I'm helping people, because every time I've gone somewhere, I've helped people. So then I said, you know what? Let me just Google some places. Let me Google some different programs. And so I ended up looking, and then mental health counseling came up, and I was like, okay, all right. So I looked into that, and I didn't apply right away. I think I probably sat on it for at least a month or two and just continued to try to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do it. I applied for it and they accepted me and I started the program and I liked it. I really liked the information they were teaching me. And I was like, okay, this is something that I could use if I stay in this field or if I go somewhere else. And then I realized I prefer to work with kids, adolescents versus adults. And I was like, okay, this could really help me. And so then I just kind of took that and ran with it. And I started interning at different organizations. I did inpatient residential treatment facilities. We do places here, different mental health facilities and organizations, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like it was a challenge, but I really enjoyed it, and I was like, this is where I need to be. And at that point, I was also about to deploy. So I ended up deploying them towards the end of my program. And so that pushed me back like a semester or so with graduating. But in the middle of that deployment, in the middle of school, I deployed. And when I came back, I finished my internship hours and I graduated. And I was like, okay, this is where everything aligns for me because I'm coming off of active duty. Because after I deployed, I ended up doing 2 more years stateside mobilized, helping the unit. So when I finished that, I ended up getting a job offer like before I finished, I ended up getting a job offer. So like everything aligned. It was perfect timing. I had already did all the preparation. And once again, everything was aligning for me. And that just said, hey, this is where you need to be. And I think from there, I just kind of took off with it. And once I finished my degree, I was like, you know what? I also want to open my own private practice. And then that's where collective psychotherapy came into play. And I started out only, like I said, wanting to work with kids because I just prefer. I think initially my thought process was that I can have a bigger impact on children in adolescence because you still have time to kind of help change the way they think. But what I have noticed is adults who really want change, they come into therapy and they do the work to change. And so my practice now is very mixed. I have matter of fact, right now, I think I have a majority of adults, but that kind of goes up and down depending on the time. Typically around the end of school year, kids will start to not go to therapy as much because it's the summer and parents like to give them time to just, be children and do whatever and go out on family vacations and all of that. So you typically start to see children get back into therapy more at the beginning to the middle of school. So that led me here to just be able to want to help people mentally. And like I said, and I tell people, it can be as simple as just you're stressed. You're struggling with navigating, something at your home. Maybe you have a newborn and you're struggling with navigating that. Maybe it's your self-esteem, or it could be something as traumatic as, hey, I've experienced this really bad trauma when I was a child from my parents that I really want to heal from. So I enjoy helping people, and that kind of led me to collective psychotherapy, led me to writing my first book, and ultimately I think has led me to help a lot of people.
Wow. What a journey. And like you said, preparation and alignment, those two things are very key. And just hats off to you for just staying true to what you said you wanted to do. You wanted to get up out of Alabama, get out there to Texas, and you found a way out there. It wasn't necessarily your first choice. And like you said, you hated that situation once you got out there, but you kept going and things aligned and you ended up where you want to be. And right now you got things rocking and rolling with collective psychotherapy. And that's amazing just hearing that journey. Like I heard so much resilience and just committed to the cause, just determined to make way for yourself. That's powerful. And like that alone, Dr. Jones, whenever you go into a new room, you think you're not good enough, always remember everything you went through to get there, get where you are. Like your journey is amazing. Like hearing your whole story from A to Z, pretty powerful.
Thank you. And I would like to say that my dream is to one day open up a facility in Alabama, actually, Prattville or Montgomery area, bring counseling services there. Even if I'm doing something where it's only telehealth, but I do plan on getting credentialed there, like getting my business license there and hiring therapists to work so that I can offer those services. So I do run into a conflict that a lot of people back home want, they want to support me and they're like, hey, can you see my kid, or can I can't because I may know you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I once I get some other therapist license there, then I think I'm helping bridge that gap and back in my hometown and giving back. So that is something that in the future I plan on working towards and hoping that I can get those mental health services available there in that Prattville, Millbrook, Montgomery area.
Absolutely. And that sounds like a long-term goal of yours. And I have no doubt you'll make it come to fruition.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'm hoping for it. It's a lot of work just to be able to get the license there. But I look at my life and say it's been work thus far. So
Absolutely, no doubt. And even just hearing you talk about adolescence, well, your clientele being more so adults and adolescents. The interesting part about that, Dr. Jones, and I can say this from someone who currently goes to therapy as well. A lot of adults, we have an inner child that needs healing. So while it may be surprising, well, while I know you were saying you were thinking that you could have a bigger impact on adolescents, which is true, and I'm sure you've had a great impact on them. I'm sure you have a greater impact or just as great of an impact on adults, because a lot of adults, we have inner adolescents that needs healing. So that's
yeah.
amazing that you've
And
expanded your clientele.
And I think you hit it spot on. Like a lot of the healing that we're doing with adults is, like you said, their inner child. Allowing them to heal that part of them so that they can now release that to become the full adult, right? The healthy adult that they want to be. Because a lot of times we don't realize we call it baggage, but the baggage that's holding you down is the inner child in you that's hurting. And what you're doing as an adult is feeding that because that's the only thing you've known to do. And until you get in therapy and realize that, now you can reverse that. And so yeah, you're 100% spot on with that. And I want to thank you for going to therapy. Myself, I do therapy, I do support groups, I do all of that because it helps me go, work through the things that I need to work through, but also helps me be able to better serve my clients when they come to me. Because I hear a lot of heavy stuff. I'm not your traditional therapist though. I don't just sit there and just, with my fingers crossed or legs crossed and we just taking notes. I absolutely dislike that.
Mhm.
Nothing to the therapists that do it, but that's just not my style. I also don't think therapy has to always be heavy. And I think maybe that's from the adolescence part, right? Because working with adolescents, a lot of them fear coming to therapy because they're like, I have to talk about problems all day, and then and it's like, no, actually, you don't. Because I want you to be able to feel the joy too. All emotions aren't bad. I want you to feel
Mhm.
the happy emotions and learn how to communicate those as well. Because when you have so much trauma, we sometimes don't know how to communicate true, authentic happiness. We think we do, but it's mask happiness. It's just me trying to pretend to be happy. And once we unravel all of that and we unpack all of the yucky stuff, now you can truly experience your authentic emotions, whether they're unpleasant or pleasant. So yeah. I'm just proud to hear that especially a Black man that's in therapy. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am, no problem. And to be honest with you, the interesting part about me even starting to go to therapy, it actually came to me during the pandemic. And I know the pandemic was a, a dark time for a lot of people. People lost family members, and I'm never going to make light of that time. But with us being in the house and quarantining and having to be in close quarters with our spouses and families, yeah, a lot of self-reflection started to come about. And to be honest with you, I just realized I don't have kids yet. My wife and I do plan to have kids in the future, and I just realized I needed to go do the work because I didn't want to pass down to my kids what was passed down to me because a lot of our elders, and they do the best that they can, right? I'm not saying our elders are bad people. It's just a lot of different ways of discipline and dealing with, yeah, disciplining children. Those things are passed down from generations, and no one ever stops to say, maybe we need to stop. It needs to stop for me because we always talking about generational curses, Dr. Jones. It's bigger than just, and I'm not making light of anybody's trauma. It's bigger than just assault physically or sexually.
Right.
Words, like that's something that's passed down. Like when you're disciplining a child and you saying things, like it's just certain things. It's just certain things. I'll speak for me, and I'm pretty sure anybody, a lot of people who are hearing this, it's something that someone in your family said to you when you were a kid that you can still remember that. Like, dang, like them words hurt. So yeah, just wanted to break them generational curses. That's why I went to therapy, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing this because we need more people who look like you and I actually doing this. And I also
Yeah,
think it's great that you're actually getting therapy yourself and you're joining these groups because what good is it giving advice and being a therapist if you're not getting therapy as well? So hats off to you.
absolutely. We need therapy. I like as therapists, we absolutely need therapy. Because we just, we're really trying to unpack our stuff, but also help other people unpack their stuff. And it can really become a lot on you if you don't know how to balance that and get, good self-care. And you're absolutely right with the generational curses, just simple with words, right? And I don't know if you've seen the parenting groups that I'm promoting, really building that because that's something I want to teach parents, is that a lot of things that you thought was right was just because you seen your parents do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it doesn't mean that your parents didn't do the best, like you were saying. So I tell, I have clients that struggle with that. They're like, well, if I complain, I'm saying that my parents were bad parents. I'm like, no, you can live in a space and your parents could have done the best they could have done, but you could still be hurt from it. You know what I'm saying? Like that is fair to say. It's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that I'm one of those people that I've acknowledged that in my own life is that my parents did the best that they could do with what they had, with what they were taught, but there are still things that they did that hurt me and that impacted me in a way that I had to unheal and unravel and unpack things. And so, still kudos. I always, anytime I've graduated, anytime I've had to stand up in front of a crowd, I've always gave acknowledgement to both of my parents. And I'll say it here, they're amazing. They helped shape who I am today. They're there at every milestone, but they still did some things that, impacted me where I needed to like do some self-work and say, oh no, that wasn't right. They could have said this way. Maybe I didn't need a whooping at that moment, right? And so I think that is huge. And I think that's what the Black community have to understand is that we don't have, by owning our trauma that we experience, it doesn't discredit our parents because we can still acknowledge that our parents were amazing people because our parents did only what they were taught and knew what to do. And they didn't have the resources that we have today.
Exactly.
So
And that's exactly what you just said at the very end. Our parents did what they knew to do, and they didn't have the resources that we have today. And that's another reason why I knew I needed to do the work. I had no excuses. I have an abundance of resources that my parents, your parents didn't have back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. We have YouTube University. We have telehealth, like what you're doing in this space. So yeah, it's great that you're in this space, and I think it's amazing work that you're doing with adolescents as well as adults. So I know that's what drove you to go into business for yourself, and it ties right into the next portion of the interview. So whenever I have entrepreneurs on the platform like yourself, I like to talk about the aha moment, action, and audacity. You've already covered your aha moment as to what inspired you to want to go into business for yourself. How long after having that initial aha moment did it take you to take action towards coming up with a name and getting started in business?
it didn't take me long. I'm a self-starter, like self-motivated person. So when I knew that, hey, this is what I wanted to do, I got right on it. Right now, I'll say this though, I didn't know what the outcome would be. I just knew that I was going to continuously prepare myself. So all of my success, everything I've done has literally been the same recipe. I constantly prepare myself and I wait for the timing. And when everything aligns, I'm like, this is it. This is where I need to, this is where I'm gonna be. And so I'm like, I don't know when this is gonna take off. I don't, I didn't know any of that, but I was like, you know what? Let me just prepare myself. Let me continue to seek mentorship in the counseling field. And I just did all of that. And I knew I wanted to open my own business. So I started asking questions. My counseling supervisor, because as a therapist, you have to have a supervisor who can monitor you for at least 18 months, no, 24 months, but at the minimum 18. And before you can even get your license, he was in private practice. And I was asking him questions like all the time about just entrepreneurship and different avenues, different ways of doing things, starting my own practice and a good population, because therapy can also be oversaturated. And so like our career field, as crazy as that sounds, because I hear people say all the time, it's not enough therapists. But from our perspective, it's like, wow, this is way too many therapists. But I used to ask all these questions. And so when I finished my so I started planning all this while I was actually collecting my internship hours. Like I'm planning all of this on the side. And so mind you, while I'm also not like starting my doctorate degree too, I'm getting all that paperwork together too. So I'm having like 3 different things going on at one time. And so once I got to that point where it was like, this is go time, and COVID was it. COVID was the thing that kind of was like, people need help and people want help now. So I have to go. So it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I got it. I was already connected with people who could do websites, people who had helped me with previous business adventures. And so this person connected me with that person, and things just kind of flowed. And it was like, okay. And once I met this person, it was like, hey, this is what I can do. You let me know when you're ready. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. Got my website going, got me a profile on Psychology Today, and just started getting out there. And it just happened. So it's one of those things where that timing just aligned with my preparation, and I just kind of took off. And honestly, clients started coming quicker than I thought they were. And so like I had to like pause for a little bit, because I'm like, okay, I can only take so many right now. And then when I found myself like, okay, I want to stay part-time right now with this. And then that's when I was like, oh, I may need to hire some help, because I don't have enough space to do this, do my doctorate degree, and still work a full-time job. Like I just didn't have it. So that's when I started hiring, bringing on other therapists. But yeah, so it was just one of those things that just once I knew it, I did all the work and just waited to that perfect timing. And once everything aligned, it was like, it's go time right now.
Yes, ma'am. That's powerful stuff. So it's 2 things I gathered from you just talked about, and everything you just said was powerful and very good stuff. So the first thing you said that stood out to me was you didn't know how it was going to turn out. You just went anyway. And what's interesting about that is not knowing how it's going to turn out stops most people from even starting, because we get into this thing of overthinking, overanalyzing. What if it don't work? We never start to think sometimes, what if it do work? What if this has been my calling the whole time and I'm sitting around here over analyzing, I'm writing all these business plans. I got this beautiful PowerPoint slide, got these great ideas, but no execution. So that's great that you went ahead and said, hey, I'm prepared. I'm about to get started, and the results going to be the results. So I want to give you kudos for that. And the second thing you talked about was utilizing all of those resources, which ties into having the right village around you, number one, as well as building those relationships. So everything that you've been able to accomplish with the business, it sounds like you did a great job, like you said earlier, of being a student of the game, being a great listener, and you were then able to leverage those relationships when it was time to start your business. And I don't think people really understand just how valuable good relationships are. Like great relationships are more valuable than money, in my opinion. So that's good stuff, Doc.
I agree. I don't think I would be where I am without building those relationships, right? And I think a lot of people have to, how I look at it is this. Every step I have taken in my career, I've had somebody there. Like they not necessarily right beside me, but someone there in a distance or just nearby, being able to say, hey, let me help you do this. Let me take this off, or let me introduce you to this person. Let me put you in this room. And every time I've stepped into a room, somebody was inspired and they were like, hey, I want to help you. And I think the biggest thing is because I was so young. I was, I'm 32 now, but when all this was taken off, I was still 28, 29. And people were looking at me and they're like, do you know, do you realize that you're not even 30 and look where you are? And honestly, to me, I never looked at that, right? I was just like, oh, well, to me, I'm like, we should be doing these things. And they're like, no, no, there's not a lot of people your age that's doing what you're doing or have who has accomplished what you have accomplished. And so like the relationship building is everything. And that is a part of my preparation phase is relationship building, because I don't know everything and I can only do so much research, right? But then I want to know some real live data. I want to speak to somebody who's been doing this for years to give me some of their experiences on how they navigated some things that people won't share on the internet. So give me the real, right? And then I had to sit down and ask people that look like you and I, because a lot of times when you step into a new career field, especially counseling, you don't see people that look like you and I. So I was like, you know what? How do I help people? How do I get people that look like you and I comfortable to want to do this? Because a part of my journey, a part of me wanting to do therapy was to help people that look like you and I, because I knew how important mental health was, but I also knew it wasn't talked about. I also knew that wasn't something that my parents knew about. Like my parents didn't say, hey, you look like you're struggling, let's go to therapy. No, like, you know what I'm saying? That just wasn't something. So for me, I had to build those relationships with a diverse group of people to know how to work and understand not just you and people that look like you and I, African Americans and Black people, but also the Hispanic culture, because I have Hispanic clients, I have white clients, I have Black clients. So at first it did start out kind of like, I want to give back and I want to capture Black people. I want Black people to get in therapy, right? But then I realized that if I want to help people, it really don't matter the color. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a kid right now that may not be Black, but I probably can relate to that kid more than anybody else can. And so that's when I was like, you know what? Let me go into different rooms. And then that's when I got introduced to a lot of different people. And it's just been an amazing journey, to be honest. I'm still going, but I always tell anybody, I'm always preparing myself. I don't know what necessarily I'm preparing myself for, and I won't know until everything aligns. But as long as I continue to prepare myself, when that timing happens and it aligns, I'm ready to go. And that's when I see the blessing and everything and exactly where I need to be. So
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Just staying ready so you don't have to get ready. And the reason why, and even just to add to what you're talking about in terms of just building relationships, the other side of that too is when it comes to building relationships and when it comes to asking questions and getting help and getting assistance from other people. If you're one of those people, like you've already described, self-started, self-motivated, you're already doing the work, you're already in motion, people will almost break their necks to help you versus if you're a person that's just standing there like a damsel in distress, kind of like the hitchhiker, like the guy that's sitting on the side of the road with his thumb out by his car. People just gonna keep driving by, but if they see him pushing this car, they're liable to jump out to help him. So you've always been pushing your own car, metaphorically speaking. So people
right.
are more than willing to help. So I think that's great as well. Just going back to what you're talking about being a self-starter. So those relationships, they're powerful, and you've been able to reap the benefits of building strong relationships. It sounds like.
Yeah, I have, and I'm very grateful for that. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So that last portion, it's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to actually act on the idea. And it's a whole other thing to put it out to the world to be praised or criticized. Who or what gave you that courage to put collective psychotherapy out to the world?
Um, I think I think it was an internal thing. I don't even think I was worried about failure, to be honest. I think I get the ability to kind of do things, just do it once I know I want to do it from my parents. I think both of them are pretty much like, if they want to do something, they'll do it. But I think even as a kid, like I was that kid, like once I had my mindset on something, I was gonna do it. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I was going to do it. So for me, it was just, I think I built that internal, and that goes back to that resiliency piece, right? Just built that up, and I was like, oh man, like let me do this. Like I didn't even see this as something that could fail. As crazy as that sounds, I did not see this as something that could fail. Why? Because I looked at it as this was something I needed to do. Even if I never go full time in my practice, I always stay part time. I'm still helping people, and I think as long as I find a way to help people and give back to people from a mental standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, I'm doing, like, I'm successful. I'm doing exactly what I need to do and be where God intended me to be, and I'm living out my purpose. So it is just something that I think, just once it was there, it was nothing could stop me from doing it. Like I was going to do this, and I had hurdles. Definitely hurdles along the way. No matter how much you prepare, but it was just something that I just didn't feel like anything could stop, that could say you can't do this right now. Because when I originally said, oh, I'm going to be all self-pay, like I wasn't going to take insurance. And then when I realized that, oh man, COVID happened, people didn't have the money like that, and people wanted to use insurance. And then I thought about myself, like, why would I want to pay for insurance and then turn around and have to pay out of pocket? So then it's like, you know what? Let's pivot. I'll have so many clients for self-pay, and then I have so many clients for insurance. And then I was introduced to a young lady who helps with getting therapists on insurance panels. So I went that route. And so that also helped expand my demographics. So I think for me, it was never a failure moment or thought. It was almost like, okay, when I reach this hurdle, how do I get over it? What do I need to help me get over it? And that was how I've operated. Even today, when I run into roadblocks, it's like, okay, what do I do now? I don't ever look at it as, oh man, like if I don't do this, my business is going down. Or nope. I just look at it and say, okay, what do I need to do now? And I think that's how I've lived everything as far as business aspect.
Okay, makes sense. Powerful stuff. Gave yourself that audacity to go out there and make it happen. Because once again, like you were just saying, and you said a few times, self-motivated, self-driven, and that's really all you need. Just self-belief and God, anything's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yes, ma'am. So not only are you an entrepreneur, you're also an author. So let's talk about your book, Shifting My Perspective, Mindset and Routine Changed My Life. 30-day affirmations and journaling routine. What inspired the book?
So the inspiration behind that was coming back home from deployment, trying to reintegrate back into just day-to-day normal activities, civilian world, and then also my clients. Once again, we, as a therapist, I do like to practice what I am sharing and encouraging my clients to do. One of the most powerful things that I think you can do is journal. And you can do whatever you want to do with the page after you write it out. But a lot of people struggle with just communicating their thoughts, emotions, feelings, right? And so I teach my clients about how your thoughts and your behaviors and your emotions are all interchangeable. They're like a triangle. So when I have clients in therapy, we use a triangle, and we talk about how if I wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm having a bad morning, I feel irritable, I typically behave like that. And I typically start having thoughts like that, like, oh, this is going to be a terrible day. You know, traffic is going to be horrible. My kids are going to not want to go to school or not want to get up, or whatever the case may be. If you learn how to share that and write that out and actually figure out what's underneath that, not just the surface level, what's underneath those thoughts, then you can literally start to heal. You can literally start to change how you see things. Because oftentimes we don't see that, we see things from a negative standpoint. And somebody may point it out and say, man, you're a negative person. And you're like, no, like I'm not a negative person. But really, you probably are being negative Nancy, right? For a whole week But you don't know that if you don't take the time to really be able to see how you're approaching situations. So I always encourage my clients to journal. Like every last one of my clients will tell you, if you ever spoke with any of them, that may just be like the trademark to know if I'm their therapist or not, because they will say, oh yeah, my therapist she has me to journal. I do. And then I give them the opportunity to share that if they would like. And I do that for two reasons. One, I want you to write it out, because sometimes the best place to communicate is through writing. Even when I work with couples, sometimes I have them do activities where they don't get to speak verbally, because a part of communication is picking up on nonverbal cues. And also part of communication is learning that sometimes I'm so mad at you that I can't verbally say anything, because I know whatever I'm going to say is going to be the bad thing. So I want to be able to tell you everything that's going on. So maybe I need to write it, right? So I like to have them write that. And then second reason why I have them do that is if they come in and they're able to share, they then get to hear themselves say exactly what they were thinking. And now you get to dissect what you just heard. So if you heard somebody say that to you, how would you feel? And so it becomes like a powerful tool, because you're like, man, like this is what I really was thinking in that moment. And then you see clients and they're saying, I probably didn't have to go that far. Like I could have, it wasn't that serious. Now that I'm thinking about it and now that I'm hearing it. And then you have someone that's like, no, that's exactly how I felt in that moment. And I like that too, because that's real, that's true. And it's like, okay, how can we allow you to feel that, but then communicate that with a person who you need to hear that can understand you. So because I have them do these exercises that incorporate journaling, I felt like it was a good opportunity to give them a platform, so to speak, because a lot of them will say, oh, do I need to go get a journal? Do I need to, what do I write? But if you're new to therapy, these are all valid questions. They're like, oh my gosh, like, do I just get a piece of paper? Do I need a lock on my, do I need a diary? So it's funny to hear those things, because it's like, what it's you, I don't want to put you in a box. Your journal is your journal. And then it's like, maybe that could be stressful. Because then I realize I'm like, if I go to therapy, this is my very first time going to therapy, and then my therapist requires me to do homework, because I am that therapist that requires you to do some homework. Because another thing I always tell all my clients is change doesn't happen in therapy. Like the work is done outside of therapy. So once we come in here and we talk about what the issue is and we kind of unpack some heavy stuff, and then we're doing these activities, and then I'm saying, hey, go home and do this, practice this, that is where you're going to see change. If you're not implementing what we're talking about, then you're not going to see change. So I was like, let me give them something to kind of help guide them, to help them ease that anxiety. When a therapist is now giving you homework, you're 30, 40 years old coming to therapy, and your therapist is like, yeah, you're going to do homework, and you're already feeling anxious about starting something new. So that kind of led me to saying, hey, like, take 30 days and really just focus on your inner self, what you experience from behaviors to thoughts. Just write about it. No judgment, just write about it. You don't have to ever worry about anybody reading this book if you don't want to. And if you feel like you want to share, come share. And I don't know if you purchased the book or not, but every 3 to 4 days, I ask you in the book to reflect back on those previous days. Why? Because I like to tell people, you get to see your growth. When you're looking at a journal book, you literally get to see your growth. And then I also like to tell people is that once you start feeling better, and you're like, hey, man, I see like 2 days ago, I was waking up thinking negative. Now I'm thinking more positive, and my day is like this now. You get to a point where sometimes we get complacent and we're like, oh man, like I don't have to do this no more. And it's not if something bad or something chaotic is going to happen, is when chaos is going to occur. Because no matter how much work you do, chaos is going to occur in your life over and over and over. May not be, every week. It may be every month, once a month, or once every 3 months. But you're going to experience some chaotic moment at some point. So when you journal, it also gives you the courage to say, I've overcome something of this magnitude before, so I can do it again. So it's almost like a reminder. So that inspired the book, because I was asking my clients to do it. I was getting really good feedback from them actually participating in writing. And I actually journal. I journal a lot when I was deployed. And then when I came back, I'm like, yeah, I have to write about some things. And so that led me to say, okay, I want to write a book. And so yeah.
Hmm. Now that makes perfect sense, and I agree with you. Journaling is definitely powerful. It's something I picked up when I started therapy 2.5 years ago, and to be honest with you, it's so powerful because journaling is a great way, like you were saying earlier, just to really express your thoughts. But I'll tell you the scary part about journaling, but it's also been the most impactful part of journaling for me. Like when you have to sit in the silence and be alone with your thoughts, that's a scary place to be sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
However, you have to jot them down. Well, you don't, yeah, it's important to jot them down you got to get it out of your brain and on paper. But yeah, just sitting alone with your thoughts, pretty scary. And a lot of people run from that. And I think more people should run towards that. And I'm sure people will get to a place where they will run towards that when they're really ready to make a change, because that's when change starts, when you start really being able to write out and express it. So back to you. That's great that you took your experiences from being deployed and turned it into a book. So just in terms of the creative process, how long did it take you from cover to cover? Well, from idea to actually producing the book, how long did that process take?
I would say right at a year. I was, it was one of those things that I thought about it, and then I think I sat on it for a while. If I can remember correct, I sat on it for a little bit, and then I ended up getting connected with the my publisher, and I pitched the idea to him, and I was just like, hey, like this is what I'm thinking, but I'm not really sure. And he loved the idea. He was like, no, like let's do it. Like send me some your rough draft. I think I only had like at that point maybe like 6 pages. He was like, send it to me. Let's see what you're working on. And I sent it to him. He gave me some feedback, and then from there, once he gave me his feedback, and he was like, no, like I think this is legit. I think I kind of picked up the tempo, and I was like, oh, okay, we can do this. And so I went ahead and finished it. I knew I didn't want it to be super long. And so I'm like, let's make this like 30 days. Like I think that's a good mark, 30 days, and just keep it. And then like after that, if I wanted to do like a series, I could, but I haven't thought more anymore about writing another book. But yeah, so right at about a year, because we did some revisions. Me and him dialogue back and forth a few times before we actually came up with the finished product. So yeah.
Okay, good stuff. About a year from idea to actually producing it. Now that's not long at all. A year flies by like that. So that's great that you were able to bring that idea to fruition. So you successful entrepreneur, successful author, and you pretty much already talked about your goals in terms of the business. So let's talk about the next portion, the vision portion. What are your short-term and long-term goals as an author?
As an author, some of my short-term goals is honestly to just get out more in my professional developments and be able to share, my book. I don't do a lot of marketing, so probably more marketing with my book will be a more short-term goal. Long-term goal, honestly, I don't have a long-term goal for my book right now. I have been asked to write, if I was interested in doing another book around mental health, but I haven't, like I said, I haven't really gave much thought to that. It was just a question that was asked, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But I think short term, I definitely can do a better job at marketing and kind of getting it out there more. I still get sales here now, Amazon, maybe even try to get it in bookstores. I haven't put a lot of effort there either. So a lot of times, if what I'll do if I have clients that come in, when I have new clients and we talk about that, I'll, tell them that I do have a book. So if they want to buy a book, so a lot of my clients will buy my book to use throughout their first 30 days in therapy. And so that's that's honestly where I am today with the book.
Okay, no worries, all good, all good. And yeah, just like you said, I know to your point you were talking about short term, just marketing and more. I'm sure once you get that spark to market more, I'm gonna see it on IG every day. Because one thing I've learned from just from speaking with you this short period, you'll go get it and you're gonna make it happen. So good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I have a good social media team. Like I'm one of those people, honestly. I kind of suck at social media.
Right.
I'm
No
like,
worries.
man, it's so much to keep up with, but my team does a really good job with, hey, send me content, which I haven't done content in a while, but yeah, and they do all the editing and get it posted and everything. So yeah. Definitely once that spark comes in, you'll start seeing videos and different ads and things like that come up.
Yes, ma'am. As we wrap up the podcast, I want to ask $1 million question. I started this podcast to highlight the greatness connected to the city, whether you were born here, lived here for a significant period of your life, be it college, military, or work. You being from this river region area, hometown hero, what makes you the most proud to be from this area?
That I'm somebody that people say have changed their lives, and I'm just from like a small town in Alabama. Like it makes me proud to say that, where no matter how, people sometimes look at Alabama and say it's Alabama, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it makes me proud because I made it out of Alabama, but I never forgot that I was from Alabama. So everywhere I go, people know. I don't care what room I step into, people know I'm from Alabama. So I'll never discredit Alabama. My parents were born and raised in Alabama. So my village is from Alabama. So all the important pieces that make me, who has given me and shaped me into who I am, deserves a lot of credit. So I'm most proud to be from Alabama because of just the people that I was surrounded around, from a little kid all the way up to an adult, right? Even with the disagreements and all of that, I appreciate it all because who I am today, I can look back and I can say, hey, I'm just a kid from Prattville, Alabama, who made it out. And I think it's encouraging when I can tell another kid that, who may feel like, they can't make it because of X, Y, and Z.
Yes, ma'am. Powerful stuff. So, Dr. Jones, how can the people connect with you? What are your social media handles and website?
So if you want therapy and you're in the Texas area, you can definitely go into Google and search collective psychotherapy. If you want to connect with me for the parenting program, which you do not have to be in Texas, you can be anywhere in the world. You can go to my website at drjones.com, actually drshandrikajones.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram. Or Facebook at Dr. Shundrika Jones.
Yes, ma'am. And of course, I'll put all of that information in the description of the episode. Hey, Dr. Jones, thanks again for the conversation. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. And I enjoyed my time here. I'm looking forward to coming back.
Yes, ma'am. Good people, that concludes another dope episode of the Gumptown Podcast. In the meantime, in between time, y'all know what to do. Be blessed, be safe, but most importantly, have the audacity to be you. Go on. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate your time and your attention. Until next time.